So welcome to all. I'm Sandra, partner at Starburst, especially focusing on our European activities, spread over 2 to hopefully 3 offices very soon. So Paris, the cradle of Starburst, Munich, and by the end of the year, probably Spain. We are 3 out of 10 other offices all over the world. So Starburst is a big organization, but I can come back to that later. For more than 3 months now, Starburst has reinvented its processes and methods without never losing its DNA. Startups identification, acceleration within the aerospace industry remains the heart of our activity. We virtualized all our events and even increased the frequency of those events. From Munich to Tel Aviv through Paris and the US, we organized more than 10 events, gathering around 3,000 people all over the world, among them startups, corporates, institutionals from the aerospace and defense ecosystem. Today, it's an event like no other. Today, we are really pleased and honored to be welcomed at this place and to be welcomed by Emmanuel Chiva, who opens his door to us and welcomes us in his place. Emmanuel Chiva, you were appointed in 2018 as director of the new French Defense Innovation Agency and member of the executive committee of the French Defense Procurement Agency, the so-called Direction Générale de l'Armement, DGA. But before that, you spent more than 20 years in the military simulation domain for various companies, from Aguerris, MASA, MASA, and in parallel, during 5 years, you were chairman of the Research, Technology, and Innovation Committee for the French Land Defense Security Industry Association, the so-called GCAT in French. So you graduated from the French École Normale Supérieure. You hold a PhD in biomathematics and artificial intelligence. You authored more than 25 papers on AI and innovation, and I cannot miss to specify that you are also a former auditor and advisor from the French National Institute of Higher Defense Studies, the very famous and only IHEDN. You're also a reserve commander in the French Navy, serving at the French Navy General Staff, and you were awarded by the end of 2019 by the French Minister of Defense herself the Décoration of Chevalier of the Legion of Honor for your services to the nation. So it's time now to, because I spoke enough, it's time to address to give the mic to you and to address the question that motivated our audience to connect today. So why actually, the first very simple question would be, why are we here today? Why do we meet each other now, Starburst and the Defense Innovation Agency? Why in this place? Why now?
Thank you, Sandra, and good afternoon to some and good morning to the others. Why here? Because I got the opportunity to see you in 3D, but more seriously because Starburst also is our partner in the animation of the Defense Innovation Lab, which is the place we are here today. It's aimed at being an exchange place where we can welcome our partners from civilian world, allies, students, journalists, and so on. Why in English? Because it's a good way to address an international audience. And why now? Because, well, first of all, we are coming out of this long lockdown period, which was actually very active for us. And it's also the time where the Ministry of Defense will introduce next week our new strategic plan for defense innovation in France. So it was quite a good timing.
Very good. So now that we have an idea of why we are here, and why we will irritate your ears for 50 more minutes with our lovely French accent. Can you give us more details about what is exactly the Defense Innovation Agency? Why this new organ, the creation of this agency? Is that because the systems till now didn't work well enough, or it's the consequence of a statement about the future challenges that have to be addressed in a new way?
Well, it's new and not so new because we're near to celebrating our second birthday since it was created in September in 2018. What is this, I would say, UAO as an unidentified administrative object? Well, it was created by, you said it, Florence Parly, who is the French MOD, but it didn't invent innovation. And of course, there was innovation in the armies, in the services, in the DGA before the existence of the agency. But if you take a look at the big picture, we're really entering a new era, and pandemics is also showing that, but a new era where you have major disruptions that appear, the one that we are living right now, but also technological disruptions, talking about game changers such as quantum technologies, artificial intelligence, or hypervelocity. We're also in a world where we see new spaces which were traditionally ruled by states, which are now challenged by newcomers, and especially companies which are not states. So sovereignty is somehow challenged. And third thing is that we see a speed up in terms of civilian innovation. It's coming very fast. It becomes a lot more available to everybody, including our opponents. So we're really entering a new era, and it was needed in this new era to have some kind of an orchestra conductor for defense innovation. So we created this agency September 2018. It's kind of a new model because we're what is called a national competency service, meaning that we are both inside and outside the DGA, the French procurement agency. We're kind of a quantum object within the DGA, I would say. My boss is the head of DGA, but we're also the innovation agency for the whole Ministry of Defense.
If I may interrupt you,
sure.
just for a while. So you spoke about the Ministry of Defense. Your boss is the head of this DGA,
yep.
But you are a civilian. So why you, Emmanuel, and why you, Emmanuel Chiva? I mean, you have an impressive career. We had the opportunity to pull up on that, but why you?
Well, because this is innovation. Okay, well, the deep reason is that we wanted, that the Ministry of Defense wanted to transform the ministry, and they wanted to do it without any bias. I come from the industry, I come from entrepreneurship, I come from research. I don't have any career plan within the ministry, so I'm kind of free. But above all, I've lived what startups live together today. So I know what are the opportunities, and I know what are the problems. And the idea was to have somebody who knows a little bit about defense, knows a little bit about civilian industry, and knows a little bit about startups to be able to do this. So it appears that I was available at that time.
So, and it's an organ that is well accepted within the institution?
Well, it takes time. If you want to get accepted, you need to show results. So that's the best way to be accepted. Actually, we have quite a large budget. We have 1.4 billion euros budget per year to prevent strategic surprise, to orient, to conduct innovation, to capture civilian innovation, and to be able to transfer it to the battlefield and to evaluate innovation. The idea is to act as a DARPA ++ with much less budget. So somebody told us we are the French DARPA. No, we have one of the missions of DARPA, and we have much less budget. But still, we have all the missions I just described.
So yes, we need results, and you said it's not so new agency anymore, even if in the institutional or ministry time scale 2 years is not that much.
It's not much.
But what could you present us as your main achievements?
Well, first of all, we funded for the equivalent of 890 million euros projects in terms of innovation last year, which is 20% more than the year before, than 2018. And we did that at the same time conducting a transformation of deep transformation of in the ministry. That means that we engaged more than 100 new projects in terms of defense. We also identified new startups. We had more than 525 new projects that were submitted to the agency. So that's the big numbers, but it means something. It means that the agency today is accepted as the entry point for innovation. And as a matter of fact, one of the first things that we decided to do is to set up a unique entry point so that innovators who wants to work with the French MOD have a single email address, they have a single web page to be able to submit their projects, and they are sure that there is a process behind that actually process their demands.
Very interesting. So
I got more achievements, but we get presented through this.
Thanks to all those information, I mean, with those achievements, those means, those billions, we saw, and maybe you can share it with our audience, that you really managed then to have a concrete impact, not on a mid or long term, but on a very short and term and a pragmatic way during the crisis we went through, and maybe not completely, those last three months. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, we wanted to be part of the national response toward the management of the pandemic crisis, because we have health service in the armies, because we have researchers, because we have connection with a lot of startups and so on. So we decided to issue a call for projects. We dedicated 10 million euros, and the idea was to be as open as possible, meaning we were looking for systems to be able to test people. We wanted to have systems for decontamination. We wanted to have digital systems to be able to ensure that we were able to continue working while on lockdown and so on and so forth. So it was very, very open. And we decided to use what we had set up before that, this unique entry point, to tell people, okay, send us our projects and we'll try to be very reactive, very agile, process them as they arrive, and make sure that if something is interesting, it will be funded very quickly.
Are people reactive?
We received in 1 month, because we launched this the 19th of March, and we closed the call for papers for projects, the 12th of April. We received 2,584 projects. And we managed to process them on the fly. Eventually, we decided to fund 37 projects among those, so we were very selective. And we engaged the whole amount, that is 10 million euros, to be able to do that. And I would say the average instruction time for the project was 5 days, and within 10 days we were able to issue contracts. So it was not so bad.
It's always like this, or it was a...
It's meant to be always like this. Actually, it was a real stress test for the mechanisms and processes that we have set up during this first year of the agency. Actually, the Ministry of Defense signed what we call the IMID, which is a ministerial direction for defense innovation. It was published on the official French journal. I don't know what the translation is. Journal officiel for those who understand French. The 7th of May, and it explains all this process. And what was very interesting is that it actually works. So we intend to continue using the same process, to continue using the simplified portal, so that people can, I would say, submit a project, and instead of submitting the 40 or 50 pages, just 10 pages, be able to have very reactive ways of funding those projects, and so on and so forth. So yes, it was a very good demonstration of what things should be from now on.
How much money you put on the table for this?
10 million.
10 million. That's it. Very good. That's sorry, I have to take care of the time, because we cannot
Sure.
stay here and develop too much on that. But I know that a lot of you will be frustrated. But we have to move forward to be able to cover all your questions you submitted us. So this brings me actually to one of the questions that has been asked by Nancy Fitzgerald from Lockheed Martin. What do you see as the biggest challenge in adopting innovative changes? For example, culture, tolerance for risk, accepting failure, resources.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, actually. Well, the first challenge is, I would be talking about risk and failure, but I would say the first challenge is human resources. If you want to be innovative, you have to have innovative people. You need to have creative people. You need to be able to recruit them. You be able to pay them. You need to be able to fire them, which is not easy in a public. And those people usually don't fall into classical categories. They're young. They're not military. They can be military, but they're not. They're very well paid, so they don't fall into the classical standards. So that was the first challenge, to be able to recruit people from everywhere who do not fall into the usual categories. You talked about the risk, the terms for risk. This is a huge risk, because those people, I won't be able to pay them the way they would be paid, I don't know, at Starbucks, for example. No, just again. That means that maybe in 3 years, I will lose them. But that's not a problem, because we want to have a roster of people who come and live and learn and come back and so on our label. Absolutely. Regarding risk, we have in France, I think, a double problem. The first one is, here, accepting failure is very difficult. It's not the same as in the US, for example. Take Apollo 13. Nobody said it was a failure from NASA. And still, they had a problem going into orbit. They had a huge problem. They didn't land on the moon, and they came back with some difficulties. It was seen as a huge accomplishment for NASA, and it is. Here in France, maybe they would have said, okay, we have a major problem, and those people have failed. There was a conference that were organized by Microsoft, I guess, called the Failure Conference. And the idea was to host people who had a problem, and they would come to us and explain why their projects were not so efficient, why they failed. I think this Fail Conference still exists. In France, it lasted just 1 year. We don't like people who fail, and that's a problem, because sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. So the idea is to have people accept this cultural change, and it's not very easy, and especially where you're managing huge systems such as aircraft carriers and combat aircrafts and so on. So there has to be a balance, and in working on that, we are setting up what we will call maybe a kind of a Defense Innovation Academy. I'm not sure about the wording, but it will be something like that. And the idea will be to change the culture of people, to be able to accept that failure or risk is part of innovation. And in this country, it's not so easy, but I have good hopes. And by the way, the project will be innovative by itself. So it won't be a classical academy, you know, with MOOCs and courses. It will be something more, I would say, innovative. I will tell you more next year, maybe.
Okay, can't wait.
Some teasing. You know,
yeah, very good. So thank you for those background elements. I'm sure it's very valuable for our audience. And just to make everybody aware of the quality of our audience and who we are talking to, so maybe sometimes we should also say, look at them, because you really want to talk to them. 600 people registered for the event today. Was quite a very high number. More than 26 countries are represented today. The main country, first one is, of course, France, with 40% of the people online, but we have also almost 30% from the US. Very big part are also corporates and startups. And the rest are laboratories, institutions, and so on. So the classic representation of the Starburst ecosystem. And by the way, we gathered, as I said before, all your questions to help us to prepare this interview. So we hope to cover as much question as possible. But don't hesitate to continue to send your question to the Q&A address that you can find on the WebEx if you are looking to this conference on WebEx, or to email us. We will gather everything and send it to Emmanuel, that can take knowledge with attention on that. So that brings us to the next question. And the next part of our interview, now that we know who you are, what you intend to do, what are your ambitions. Starburst, so we have to come back to our word. We are a global startup accelerator, present in 10 countries, working with more than 50 world-class corporates worldwide also. And we can perceive signals, strong and the others. But what is not a signal anymore, it's a fact, is that the disruptions are coming from the startups worldwide. And we don't have to go until the US. We can see, even if it's not specifically defense related, just to mention some startups that everybody knows here. Lilium in Germany raised almost $400 million and even closed the last round during the lockdown. Volocopter, same, around $100 million. And we see a lot of long endurance drones, logistic drones, AI applications, augmented reality applied to combat aviation, and so on. How do you make sure you identify and you capture the best of all the startups making so much noise everywhere around us?
I'm sure I will do. We do our best to do so. And first of all, you need to understand that you can see the agency as a project acceleration factory, I would say. Meaning that we accelerate 4 kinds of projects: research projects on the long term, capability projects, what we call defense technology projects, that are used to prepare the technologies that we will need in the foreseeable future. Sorry, I'm looking at you, but I'm sorry for the audience. It's much easier to look at a person than at a camera, and we don't have since we need to be far from each other. It's a little bit complex, so I will try to alternate. We have also internal projects that are backed by the innovators from the Ministry of Defense. And we have what we call innovation acceleration projects. That is project that come from startups or SMEs or industries or labs in the civilian world outside the Ministry of Defense. For all those projects, startups can participate. I mean, even if you build the next generation aircraft carrier, we will need technologies as soon as they become available. And this is a big challenge, by the way, because in 2035, when the next aircraft carrier will be put to sea, we won't be at 5G. Maybe we'll be at 13G or 14G. So we need to make sure that there is a cooperation between startups, industrial groups, SMEs, and the MOD to be able to inject this innovation. So just to say that it's not because it's large, I'm talking about large defense projects, that startups are not able to participate. Now, the problem is how to identify them, how to activate them. First of all, we set up a what we call open innovation cell. It's a team which job is actually to be able to go fishing and hunting. Hunting because you know the game, you know what you want to catch. So we go at the Consumer Electronics Show, that is SODO 2029. They will go back at the Consumer Electronics Show when it will be possible. So to be able to identify the technology we need. But we have also what I call fishing using, big nets. You just launch a net and you see what comes to the surface. And to do this, we use call for proposals. So we have themed call. If you go into your website, you will be able to see a list of 12 open innovation priorities, meaning that all the startups that want to work with us can look at this list and say, okay, we are expert in, I don't know, man-machine interface or artificial intelligence, and they will be able to submit their projects. We have also sessions here in the Innovation Defense Lab. Each week, we have what we call sitting startup session, when a startup is, I would say 3 or 4 startups in a way in afternoon are welcomed here during 1.5 hours. It's not pitch session, it's really an analysis session. And so far we have conducted, even during lockdown, more than 120 interviews of startups. And we are working with DJA, who has a huge network able to identify and to interact with startups. And at last, we have partners. You're part of them. You have a huge network of startups, and it's the idea in having Starburst helping us in the lab was also to be able to capture of this ecosystem. So it's a combination between fishing and hunting and call for projects and issuing very open calls. I'm not sure I will be able to identify all the startups, but I will try not to miss the one that really matter.
Now we know how you identify, try to capture and to bring them to work on specific calls for application or projects. But how do you feed them? I mean, especially in this context, in the period we are going through. I understand that in the past, the Ministry of Defense might have been reluctant to be the main client sponsor for a company, especially even more if it's a startup, and that the ministry wants to let them grow by themselves on other markets. But in this particular context, that has shown also the criticality of certain technologies, data. I mean, it was a main pain point, and about all those COVID applications that came too late, for example, in France and so on. We saw that technologies are key. Some are as from on a sovereignty, I'd say, from a sovereignty topic. And the corporates are taking back their investments. I mean, there is a drop in investment announced by all the big players from the industrial base. Is it not the time, or it's not a possibility that the ministry take the lead on that?
Well, yes, we do support startups actively, and yes, I think it's time to amplify this effort, to be quite honest. We have already a variety of tools and mechanisms to be able to support those startups. I'm talking about grants. I was talking about project grants and subsidies. So it's okay, for example, to be to feed startups by giving them a grant on a certain technology. We can come back later on the why we don't want to be the only customer of startups, because it's very linked to the funding of startups, which is another question. By the way, when I'm talking about startups, it's not limited to French startups. Any international or foreign startup can come to us, submit a project, and we will examine it the same way that we investigate French technologies. And once again, it is our responsibility to select in the panels of tools that we have, those are which are the most adequate to be able to support an experimentation, for example. What we see in those times is that, for a long time, military innovation has fostered civilian innovation. It was the rules for many, many times. And those 20 last years, I will say, we saw that civilian innovation could inspire and maybe supersede military innovation. And now maybe it's the time to see another move in that direction. It's the current crisis certainly paves the way for a new role of the MOD, that is to sustain innovation for startup and SMEs through a variety of means. And this is what we intend to do.
So,
for example, to give you a very precise example, last week we signed 2 conventions with 2 major associations. You mentioned it, the GCAN and GCAT, who manage the defense naval applications, and defense naval industry and defense airline industry. Those are associations which have developed startup acceleration programs. We will participate to those programs. We participate also to the juries, the selection juries of the startups, which want to enter those programs. And we certainly will accompany those startups through subsidies, through projects, through grants. To be such a association will act as proxies for us to be able to identify the technologies that we need. I don't know if I'm clear, but
to me it's clear. So
I hope for you it's clear, yeah. But I don't see you.
So I see many different actions that are very promising, that are very strong, also messages to the ecosystem. But to make long story short, what should we do to create a well-funded ecosystem of disruptive defense startups?
Well, what the MOD should do is different from what all others should do. Meaning that I'm deeply convinced that we're toxic in early stages of a startup. Meaning if we intend to inject seed money into emerging startups, I think, and I speak by experience, but I think it's the best way to kill them. Because we will focus them, and a startup is meant to be focused. We will focus them on subjects that are hard, with a very complex market, long-term decision cycles, regulated market with export limitations. And since the problems and the conditions that we ask are very, very demanding, they will be exhausted by using all their available resources to satisfy those objectives. So I think early stage is not the way to do it. But I'm convinced that as soon as a company has developed a primary market, our job is to make sure that we can identify transversal dual-use technologies and fund their orientation towards defense. What we want to do is build a mechanism by which we will be able to inject some money, some capital money, to act as a venture capital in late-stage companies which have a dual-use market. And this is work in progress. I don't want to steal a fire from the ministry, so I don't announce anything. But this is what we are working on right now. So I don't know what we should do. I know what we are trying to do at our level in France, working with other venture capital, working with the industry to be able to make sure that we don't kill the startups by investing in them too early.
And on a case-by-case basis, depending on the quality of the startup, the technology, and so on.
And so on, and work in progress. Once again, I'm sorry for that, but it can be frustrating. But...
Okay, thank you. So we run completely out of time, but we have to move to the last part of our interview, which is about cooperation. So there were a lot of questions from the audience about this, about the potential cooperation, and you spoke a little bit about that earlier with foreign countries and startups also. Our partnerships, something that partnerships with allied countries, UK, US, something that we want to do, or you want to do actively, and focus on Europe also. Maybe that's a very interesting topic. What is your position?
First of all, we are cooperating. We're cooperating a lot, and we will continue to cooperate. We have bilateral cooperations, we have European Union level cooperations, and we have, I would say, we're talking about countries, but also cooperation with foreign companies. Regarding bilateral cooperation, for example, because we have a nice US audience, let me tell you that the relationship in defense and technology between France and the US is positive, it's fruitful, it's something that we have developed from a long time, it's profitable for both nations, and well, despite of the current crisis, we are very confident that we will be very soon coming back to the US. We have a strong dialogue right now to be able to cooperate on various subjects. We cooperate with Singapore, for example, also. We have created a new committee for open innovation in Singapore, but we had two previous committees, one on research and one on capabilities. We're cooperating with the UK. We have the Lancaster House birthday, actually. It will be the 10th birthday of Lancaster House agreement this year. And Brexit or not, we have a strong cooperation with the UK. So this will go on, and this will be amplified. Actually, it was one of the assignments that the ministry gave me when she created this this agency. And then we have Europe. And the European context is critical for us. We need to be able to participate to what the European Commission is preparing, that is called the European Defence Fund, which will support cooperative defense project. So far, the announced budget is 9 billion, but it's still subject to negotiation. And the project that will be funded by this European Defence Fund need to be cooperative. That doesn't mean that we merge all our capabilities. It will be cooperative, and several countries will be implied, including cooperation with academia, which is part of those projects. So we're working on that with preparatory actions, also in the context of NATO. And by the way, we are part of the NATO innovation ecosystem. We collaborate with NATO. It doesn't mean that we will do everything in cooperation, and France will continue to have a national defense innovation in policy on matters where national sovereignty is required, and for example, nuclear deterrence. But to tell you that we have a whole panel of cooperation that are in place, and we're open to do more. Well, I hope that answers your question.
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
We all have more question about that.
And once again, the fact that a company is foreigner doesn't prevent it to work with us. and especially we have a variety of bilateral cooperation, which can act as a host for those point-to-point cooperations.
Thank you. And I guess that especially now that we are about to launch 3 major programs, we launched already 3 major programs in Europe concerning land, air, sea, the future aircraft carrier, the future combat air system, the future tank. All those projects also in cooperation. So that's good to hear that cooperation continues and is key and it will be emphasized. Does, as you said, those systems will be operational in 20 to 30 years, and we don't know. Nobody here knows. It would be very, very smart to know what will be the precise the world tomorrow and the precise technological pieces that we will need, that we will have on board. Does the agency plans to or intends to play a role in those programs, and how does it work?
Actually, it's our job. It's part of our job. I talk about 4 kind of projects that we accelerate. One is the defense technology programs. For the French people, you know them as Études-Amont. Those are programs which will help to develop the capabilities that we need in the context of those future programs, like the FCAS program for future combat aircraft system, the MGCS for main ground combat system, the future tank, the next generation aircraft carrier, and so on. So each and every year, we gather with DGA and with the services, with the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, to be able to have a strategic view on all those programs and see where we need to accelerate, where we need to slow down, what we need to do in 2021, what we need to do after, because we cannot incorporate all the priorities. What you mentioned are the very structuring programs, those that we know we will do, and we have a 3 years planning that ensures that we have the resources to be able to conduct those programs, which are conducted by the DGA, not by the agency. Remember, we are an orchestra conductor, and we don't play all the instruments in an orchestra. And we need also to have a 5-year vision of what is planned in terms of innovation orientation. And this is the strategic plan I announced, and that will be presented by the ministry next week. So this is the DNA, actually, of the agency. It's the main difficulty to be able to ensure that we finance short-term innovation, long-term innovation, future programs, make sure that everybody is happy with that. But we have a chance. We have a French specificity. It's called the military programming law. And it ensures that we have an increase in the resources. And actually, this increase is from 730 million euros in 2018 to 1 billion euros in the next years to foster military innovation.
Impressive. So the last question for this part, as you mentioned, programs in cooperation and innovation in cooperation potentially. So who are your counterparts in Europe? Do you see other agencies like?
Oh, you mean in other countries?
In Europe, especially.
Yes. Well, we work with local structures in Europe. I would say in the UK, is UK Europe? I don't know, sorry. But we work with DASA, for example. In the US, we have met DARPA, we have met the DIU. In Singapore, it's DISTA, for example, and other structures. We have a lot of counterparts. And it all depends, I cannot give you one big answer on that, but it all depends on the bilateral agreements or the European agreements that are put in place. What we have is a French specificity, once again, is DGA. So it's DGA is something, it's a structure that is, which mission is to equip the defense forces. So it's not the armies directly who are in contact, but through DJ we have a very comprehensive list of counterparts, and we have the teams to be able to interact with them.
Okay, thank you. I think we are not far from the end of our this interview, and maybe before we finish, I'd like to pick some questions from the audience that we had to complete maybe some things that we didn't cover now. One of our startup here in France actually asked what concretely, what technologies does the Defense Innovation Agency see as most important to develop as a startup, and how can I help you?
As a startup, that's complex, but I told you we have 12 priorities that are listed on our website. Is defense.boof.fr. It's not very web friendly, but still, that would be an innovation, by the way, if I manage to have my own website, but it's not for today. So we have this list of 12 priorities in terms of open innovations. I'm talking about, for example, the autonomous vehicles, management of autonomous vehicles fleet, that kind of thing. So we have this list that can be free gathered on a website. And more than that, in the former strategic plan and the strategic plan that we're announcing right now, we have big priorities. Last year, it was clearly the space technologies. We have now also, we have a space command. So space, cyberspace, artificial intelligence, and we created the coordination cell within the agency for the artificial intelligence projects. This year, I can talk about hypervelocity. I can talk about quantum technologies, quantum sensors, quantum computation, quantum cryptography, and of course energy, which is a major theme, to be very precise. But if you go to the website and if you read our new strategic plan, you will identify those technologies. And by the way, we will prepare a English translations of those documents.
Very good. Another question was kind of funny. It's an out of the box question. So we were very traditional in this interview. So let's finish on a maybe crazy note. A question from Rose Haft from Lumenora. How is climate change and international relations part of your defense strategy?
Thank you for this difficult question. Well, actually, one of our missions, I thought we were not a French DARPA, but we're kind of a French DARPA also. So we need to be able to identify the innovations that will help us either react or prevent strategic surprise. And climate change and international relations and the way they will evolve is a kind of strategic surprise, because everything can happen. And I don't know how to answer your question because I'm not imaginative enough. So we decided to, so I will not answer a question, I can tell you what we are preparing to be able to answer that. We decided that we wanted to hire the most imaginative persons on Earth. They're not French, they're not English, they're not US, they're a population. And those people are the science fiction writers and drawers and people who make scenarios, because they have a free mind. It's not new in terms of idea. I mean, the US Army, US Marines also already decided to use science fiction communities. But we launched an initiative called Red Team. We are right now into the selection of the winning team. And the Red Team will be a team of science fiction authors and writers, which will work on setting up disruptive scenarios. For example, climate change. Imagine there is a new ice era. What it means in terms of geopolitics, what it means in terms of the human society, what it means in terms of military model, and what are the innovations that could challenge us. And this will be something that we want to test. We want to assess this approach. We've launched it, and the first results will be available, I think this fall. So I'm not answering, but I want to be surprised by this team.
You know that you have to be prepared to the next.
Yes, absolutely.
Next level. Very good. I said it was the last question, but it's not the last question. We have a surprise question. Imagine this is today your last day at the agency. You have to leave. You served enough years, hopefully decades, maybe. You can leave and you look behind. What will let you think or be sure that you achieved your mission successfully?
Well, I think the first thing is I would be happy if enough innovations that we have accompanied or transferred into the battlefield or to the users they need. Today, our ambition, by the way, is that we have each year we want to have 400 projects in terms of ideas, and 15 to 20 of those projects being deployed operationally on the battlefield each year. This is the ambition. It's not much, but it's very difficult to go through from the idea to the mock-up to the prototype to the product and so on and so forth.
For now, we are around.
Well, we're not far from this. Well, this year I didn't have 400 projects. I have already more than 3,000 projects because of the COVID pandemic, but that's cheating. So that will be the first, I will say, KPI, key performance indicator. The second one will be to be able to change the mindset of innovation into the MOD. In what we talked before, in terms of acceptance of risk, the acceptance of failure, and make sure that actually innovation itself is a KPI in the careers of people who embrace it. So because you have taken risks, because you're able to be creative, maybe there is a new way of recognizing your career in the ministry. And maybe the third one is about predicting the future. I would be very happy to have used a very innovative method, a very creative method to have predicted, using the red team, for example, a strategy surprise, which was not predictable by the old world methods. That would be a plus, and that would be useful, I think, in this context.
Thank you, and you will for sure also inspire a lot of people to join this also defense ecosystem journey, to apply
Please do.
To join your teams and to the startup and the ecosystem to work on the projects. To find them on intradev.gouv.fr, but we will.
I'm pretty sure that you will put all the relevant information.
Exactly. So thank you very much. Thank you to the audience to have been with us. When we are virtual or online, we have to be really on time because people are moving from one conference to the other one. So really, thank you very much. It was not it's not a usual normal exercise to do
that. But it's interesting.
It shows also your agility and your flexibility that not everybody in the ministry would be able to do that on a so short notice and also spontaneously. So thank you for that, and let's continue to exchange. We continue to gather your questions, and we, Starburst, will be happy to see you again online next week for the next US selection committee, and the week after for our focus of a Spanish-focused selection committee with brand new startups showcasing their technologies. So thank you very much, and see you soon. Bye.